Hello, welcome back to the High Review Podcast. My name is Jonathan, your host, and I'm here with my beautiful wife, co-host Alexus. Today, we have some of our very, very special friends, some people that have poured into our lives more than we can put into words, people that are full of wisdom. We can probably do this whole marriage series that we're doing right now, and they could do the whole thing, and It'd be amazing. But today, we have Abe and Trish.
Hey, what's up, y'all?
And their new daughter, Bravery.
Yes.
She's on the floor here. So she's going to be joining us on the podcast as well. So today, this is part 2 of our marriage series that we're jumping into if you've been following along. And today we're actually talking about cherishing, how to cherish, what it looks like, biblically, what it looks like, all of that stuff. I was talking with Abe earlier and Lex, but I feel like the word cherish and the idea of cherish hasn't really been much in my life quite lately. I feel like it's not much in my vocabulary. And I think it's kind of a missed mark because when you say your vows, it's to love and to cherish. And we always incorporate the love part, but we don't really incorporate the cherish part. And I feel like that's where the mark is missed a lot of times. And maybe a lot of marriages struggle because of that. But that's just my opinion. I think we're going to go into a lot more depth of what cherish means. But
yeah. And just to add on that, I'm really like I said earlier, I'm thankful to have you guys on here because you, Abe, are one of the first people that I've ever heard the word cherish before, other than our vows, like you said.
Right.
But you brought up that book, Cherishing, and just the way you guys cherish each other in y'all's marriage has poured into our marriage so much. So I'm just so thankful to have you guys on here and just hear wisdom from y'all and just hear y'all's experience in your lives and how you cherish each other in the midst of, busy lives and 2 kids now and what that looks like. But just wanted to add that.
So to start this off, Abe and Trish, whoever wants to go first. I know you guys, you have a pretty good understanding of cherish. I think you guys portray it really well within y'all's marriage. For the people that don't know what cherish is, what is kind of a quick definition, the base level of cherishing? What does that look like in a marriage?
Well, kind of the way I came to understand cherishing is somebody gave an illustration that was just really helpful to me. That when you love something and then cherishing are kind of the corresponding actions that come with that feeling. So this guy talked about how you love a classic car, but cherishing that classic car means you polish it, you shine it, you keep it clean. And there's an extra level of intentionality that goes into that. And so I think when you talk about loving and cherishing someone, I think there's a level of practicality that really has to come into play with cherishing where I think it's a term that a lot of people have heard, but when it comes into like, what does it look like?
Right.
Some of those questions we need to not be afraid to ask because those things are important. And most people, it's easier for them to tell when they're not cherished than when they are.
That's good.
But when there's a real deficit there, people feel it. And they may not have the language of like, oh, I'm just not being cherished. But there's a real feeling there that goes with that.
Yeah.
And so I just think it's an extra level of intentionality that goes into the individual that is the object of your affection that expresses that affection as well.
Yeah. With y'all's journey, like how you guys have been married for how many years?
7.
7 years.
7 years.
Yeah, 7 years last month. So
Awesome.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
That's awesome, y'all. Well, throughout y'all's marriage, obviously every marriage has to go through a process of learning and, learning each other, developing and becoming, stronger together over the years. When did you kind of start to implement this cherishing thing? And did you actually see like a huge change when you started to learn about this in y'all's marriage? Or was it just from the beginning?
No. I think it's something that we're going to continue to grow and learn in. I don't know if there's an exact marker, but I think definitely as life happens and, we're not exempt from suffering. We're not exempt from hard things in life. And I think those always bring out you know, either the best or the worst, and you're at a point where it's like where we're going to go from here. So I think the marking points for us have typically been through hard seasons. Those are kind of markers where we are at a point where it's like, okay, where do we go from here? Are we going to grow together or apart? And I'm so grateful that each time we've chosen to grow together, and that honestly has deepened our relationship. And for me, you know, I think there are a lot of Christians that could probably relate, or even non-Christians, that you want to just avoid pain. And I think I've always been afraid of suffering or afraid of pain. And the longer I live, and even the longer I've been married, the less afraid I am, because I've seen how the Lord really does use it. And even though he's not the author of it, like he's still the ultimate victor. And so as long as he's your king, like he continues to use it for your good. And so I would say that it's not necessarily one moment, but it's with each kind of like turning point in our life and in our marriage that we've chosen each other that has just deepened our intimacy, our relationship, and then ultimately also how we choose to it would maybe change our perspective of the value that we see in each other. And I think that Cherish comes alongside of that, of seeing value in each other, and then Cherish.
Yeah, was there ever any moments in y'all's marriage where you didn't see a value in each other? There like a season that you're in and you're like, okay, I'm not looking at my spouse the way like I fully should because of this season or this hardship we're going through. Did y'all ever experience that? And
So I look back at our first year of marriage, and we both got married later in life, and had gotten really used to doing life on your own, and then that adjustment. And I think there was a real humbling that took place that first year of marriage of, wow, there are things that are way harder than I ever thought they'd be. And when I looked back, our first year of marriage, so many of those arguments and fights were truly rooted in her not believing that I was on her team. And in my mind, I was like, well, of course, of anybody's team I could choose to be on, I chose to be on your team.
Right.
You know,
sounds familiar.
because that was how simple it was. But, you know, when two become one, there is an increased level of advocacy that has to take place that she should never question whether I'm on her team.
Right.
And if she feels cherished, she's not questioning whether I'm on her team or not. And so that I look back at that first year of marriage as kind of like an eye-opening experience of there has to be more intentionality. You can't just accident your way to a good marriage.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really hard truth to grasp.
Yeah, that's very true. That's something that really hit me as I was going over this topic. Because like I said, being open and candid on this episode, like we're doing a marriage series. Not to say we know everything about marriage, but to kind of like dive deep into the topics and learn stuff for us, you know, learn stuff for our marriage as well. And Cherish is really just, I've had like a very surface level relationship with it. So right now, diving into it, I'm starting to like get my eyes up into some other things and ideas of it. And the action part really stood out to me. Like it's love and to cherish. Love is a verb, cherish is a verb. It all takes action, you know, if you're not putting action to it. Actively cherishing your wife, actively cherishing your spouse. Like you said, it doesn't just happen. You know, it's not just an accident.
Yeah, so I liked what Abe was saying, and it reminded me of how cherishing can bring like healing in our lives. And because you mentioned that when we're not cherishing, we will know, like we can feel that. Like we know like something's missing in a way. Like I'm not being valued, I'm not being cherished right now. And that just reminds me that whenever we feel cherished, it's going to bring that healing. And I'm trying to remember like what you said.
What Abe said?
Yeah, that point you said about how
like how you can notice when someone's cherished to when someone's not.
It was another thing that you said about cherishing and how that she knows that you won't leave her, that like you're on her side.
Yeah, that I'm on her team. Yeah,
that you're on her team. Okay.
And that's really like speaks to that word advocacy, that I'm just that inert team member. That I think that's really where cherishing comes from, is that you have to value the unity. And it's not just me cherishing her, it's me cherishing our relationship. And that has to be the greater good. The greater good has to win out. Of this is not just an I win, but when she wins, I win.
Yeah.
And that perspective, I think, is one of the biggest game changers in marriage, when you stop thinking about two individuals and it's two become one. And she can't lose without me losing. And that will change the way you talk to them, because if they're hurt, I hurt.
Yeah.
I feel like that's hard sometimes. Like, I would love to like really get that down, because like we're going to feel each other's hurts. We're going to feel each other's things that we go through. So, but I know that we're also supposed to help them up. So it's like, if Jonathan's having a really hard day, or he's having so much on his shoulders, and us wives, we're supposed to be there to help lift him up in a way. But at the same time, like, I'm very much of a feeler, feel everything. So it's like, I can feel his emotions, where I have to learn how to separate it and not take it personable, and more like be there for him and help serve him at the same time of feeling his stuff. You know, I don't know if you guys can relate to that at all, but
Yeah. I mean, I feel like what Abe is talking about, I feel like you're pretty good at. Like, when I was really looking into this, I was like, dude, Alexus is really good at cherishing me, I feel like. Because I feel like you really, like, relate, like, as a friend. Like, you're just there. Like, you're just always supportive, like, no matter what happens. And even if it's, like, bad, even if it's good. Like Abe was saying, like, you're kind of, like, cherishing the advocacy of, like, us being partners. Like, it's both of us. It's not just me. You know,
Yeah.
I can't win without you winning. I can't lose without you losing too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was just thinking about
probably
that.
was just taking it a different way when I heard that, but that makes sense.
Yeah, but I feel like you're pretty good at cherishing. I mean, obviously you read the book, you know, not too long ago. There's a book.
I've been telling him, I was
but
like, please read this. It's
Yeah.
so good.
I definitely want to now. I want to get deeper into this, but I've been studying it a little more, and yeah, there's just been some things revealed. I think it's good stuff.
I can tell, like, once he started studying the word cherish and like what it means, like his whole like dynamic, he's like, this is I've been missing this. Like, nobody talks about cherishing. Like, we talk about love, but not cherishing.
Yeah.
Isn't it fascinating? I think language is so cool, because there's stuff that you hear all the time, you know, and it just kind of is like, but it's crazy how when you really delve into a word, how much you can really dig out of it.
Yeah.
Whether it's cherish or another word that you just hear all the time, that there's actually so much depth to it that if you put your attention to it, you know, you can really draw out of it. And I think that's what the word cherish is, where, you know, maybe even a lot of people listening, it's like, you know, oh, I never even thought about the word cherish, you know, but when you dive into it, it's like, oh, wow, there's so much there that I, you know, didn't even think just hearing the word.
Yeah. I feel like I'm glad we're starting this episode or the marriage series with cherish, because it seems like everything flows from that place in your marriage. Do y'all feel like that?
I certainly think a lot of it does, because, like, to me, an aspect of cherishing is that does the other person factor into much of your decision making? You know, because that's thinking about the whole and not just you as the individual. Mm-hmm. And I mean, we're faced with decisions all day, every day about that affect the other person that we're married to, that affect our home life, that affect our kids. Mm. And, you know, part of cherishing is continually prioritizing that thing.
Yeah.
And I think feeling cherished, I can give countless examples of how he's chosen to pivot, where he's going in one direction and it might not even be wrong, but I communicate that I need, or it's visible that I need something else. And I've watched him time and time again choose to pivot in order to, again, not only help me win, but us win, you know. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that I can, like I said, give countless examples where I've seen him make a decision, you know, and it's a conscious decision to change where we're headed, mm-hmm. you know. Yeah. So in order for me to be healthy, for us to be healthy, you know, and that speaks volumes when you consciously make a decision to value the other person and demonstrate that you do.
Yeah. What is kind of like, to get a little into y'all's relationship? Like, what does it look like to, like, if you were to take action to cherish Trish, what would that look like for you?
Yeah, I think there are like really simple examples. You know, one of the first fights early in our marriage was over Diet Coke, and how a Diet Coke, you know, she prefers Diet Coke from a fountain rather
Do
than
we
Diet
have
Coke.
any Diet Coke drinkers out there? And 100% fountain is better than can bottle.
I know Lauren loves that DC. Lauren.
And so, you know, like recently, since the birth of our daughter, she doesn't do caffeine, and so finding out that Quick Trip carries caffeine-free Diet Coke in the fountain,
Oh wow.
it's like that's a really small thing, but it's also like, hey, I had you in mind in this decision.
Yeah.
And then I think, you know, just being mindful and, you know, trying to be aware of things that she shouldn't have to say, you know, being able to read what's going on. And sometimes that's like, hey, I'm going to take our son to the park. And sometimes that's like, you know, you need to go to sleep.
Yeah.
And so I think,
Because I don't get a lot of sleep with her.
Right, yeah.
Go to bed. Because I need my sleep. That's why.
Yeah, they have a newborn. They're restless people right now.
Yeah.
well, and if she communicates something like in our marriage, that's, and she says like, hey, I feel safer when this happens, regardless of how I feel about it, whether I feel like it's unnecessary, you know, if that helps her feel safe, then it's worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like, yeah, the fact of like being moldable to our spouses, I think that's so hard for people. And the idea of like, you know, it's in our vows to love and to cherish. And the idea of love, like we can look at the Bible and get the qualities of love, you know, patience, slow to anger, forgiveness, you know, all that stuff. But we can follow those kinds of principles, but when it comes to cherishing, that is the very much moldable part of like the relationship. Like if she prefers this, then I'm going to change just because that's what she wants, you know? And I don't know. I think that's such a, I hate to say it again, but it's a missed mark. Like I think so many marriages that I know of that I'm in communication with, or that I am in relation with, like cherishing is just absent, I feel like. And it's not,
I feel like
it's not picked up so easy like that.
Well, yeah,
like the idea of love is.
I think we as Christians can be notorious for having things that we know in theory, but have no idea how to practice. And I think everything associated with our faith should have a practicality to it. And that goes from like, Scripture has very straightforward things to say about what marriage looks like. And there's a practical level of what that looks like. And I think you need to be proactive in asking the questions of like, I don't have the tools to do this. So who does and how can I get them? And I think that's where, you know, we have friends that have been married much longer than we have that have been tremendous resources to us in several areas. And I think that's a big thing, is that the Lord has not called you to do marriage by yourself.
Yeah.
And, you know, when it comes to cherishing, what her and I were talking about recently, is that the hard part about it is that it often looks different in different seasons of your life. And so we often fall in love with cherishing looking a certain way, but then that season changes, and that has to shift as well. And she's a different person than she was 7 years ago, and so am I. So if I endeavored to cherish her the same way while we were dating now, that wouldn't work, because you're growing and you're evolving, and that takes a level of sensitivity and intuitiveness to say, and to check in and to ask. Like, I don't think we should ever be afraid to ask our spouses, like, hey, what do I do that makes you feel cherished? Or on the other side, what do I do that doesn't make you feel cherished?
Yeah.
I don't think we should ever be afraid to ask those questions, because to expect each other to be mind readers is just kind of crazy.
Well, and I feel like that's something definitely women can grab a hold of. Sorry for the hiccup.
It's all right. Bravery has a lot to say on this topic.
She's already very vocal. No, but I think we as women, especially there's this like idea that we were born with that like men should just know, and they don't. And
Wow.
I think,
Say that again.
I think sometimes we like feel like it loses the romantic side if we're like, but then if I have to tell him, like, then it's not romantic that he just surprised. But honestly, it's okay. Like, just communicate what you need. You know, be clear. Like, he's not gonna know unless you tell him. And I feel like that's something that we've now overcome. That like it's not a problem for us to communicate our needs. Like it doesn't steal the magic. It doesn't. I don't know. Maybe people are different than me, but I feel like, you know, in high school or whatever, you know, you feel like it like stole some sort of romantic element when you had to like directly say like, I need this
from
to
you
feel loved, you know?
Yeah.
But it's part of marriage. It's part of like, yeah, like, hey, I need this. And it's also on me then to communicate that. If I'm not getting it, like, am I communicating it? You know, like, or am I internalizing it and just hoping that one day he'll pick up on it?
Yeah, I would agree. I like the over communication. Like I'm an over communicative person. Like
I probably should exercise that more.
Like for example, like I always ask her, like, can you scratch my back? Like I really like my back.
Every
if we're watching
night.
a movie,
This is an every
can
night
you scratch
thing.
my back? But like
routine.
after she scratches my back, she's like, you never scratch my back. You don't ask.
Or rub my feet. And
Yeah,
I'm like,
but you don't ask. See, that's one of those things. Like she's expecting me to like know that she wants that. You know.
yeah, I definitely need to exercise.
I don't mind.
To
You know,
ask more.
I'll do it.
It's nice to hear that though, like from another couple, to hear that it's okay to ask. It's okay to say, hey, I would like to get some flowers here and there. Or I think us women, we want to be romanticized. We want to see that romantic side of our husband, and we want to feel like we're being chased in a way. Would you pursued?
Yeah, but even with the idea of cherishing on our end, on the husband's side, that kind of comes with it. Like if, for example, the car example, if I have a nice like old body car that's like a gem that I want people to, you know, it's a showcase car. In my head, I don't have to go to the car and look at it and see what I need. In my head, I already know I got to buy this, this, and this at the store to get it prepared for something else. So it's the same thing. If I cherish you the way that I should be, then away from home, away from you, and I'll be thinking about, oh, I know I could do that for her. Maybe I can, on the way home, I'll get some flowers or whatever, pick up some food, you know? Yeah. All that stuff. You know? And I think that comes with the territory of cherishing. You know?
Yeah, I think it's a really powerful concept. I think it's so connected to like dying to yourself as well, because like there's a side of you that would get offended with certain aspects of that, but it's like, no, when it's the person I care about more than anything, like we got to pivot. Mm-hmm. And that allows you to, you know, really change what you need to and not let it derail you and take it so personal. Or when she says, hey, like you've been doing this and I don't feel cherished when you do that. You can either like let that destroy you. Like, I remember, I laugh at this now, but it's like 2 or 3 months into our marriage, and we were in an argument, and it's like, of course, like 11:30 at night. We're both super tired, and
the best arguments.
Oh man, you know, everybody says don't let the sun go down on your wrath. Nobody says don't start a fight at 11 o'clock. But she looked at me and she said, I don't feel like, you know, you trust me. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've completely failed as a husband. My wife doesn't think I trust her. But then you realize, like, man, trust should continually grow as the relationship grows. And that's okay in that moment. That, man, I look back and laugh at it because that's ridiculous to think that like we'd reach the apex of trust like 90 days in, like we hit it. But it's such a growing and evolving thing. And cherishing is in that same vein, that it should continually grow and evolve as the relationship grows and evolves. And, you know, there's things that she may have to tell me 5 years in that she shouldn't have to tell me 10 years in. Yeah. You know, there should be like a growth and a retention of, like if cherishing is like pursuit, then pursuit is like you've never attained. Because when in your mind, when you've attained, there's a complacency. that comes in. And I think that can really creep into marriage for sure. And has it moments, and sometimes you need to be shocked out of that with a conversation that doesn't feel great.
The reality check.
Yeah, and it happens.
Yeah.
And it's just about like, what is the gap between there and getting back on track?
Yeah. I feel like that's a really good point, that you're never going to really like attain the idea of cherishing. It's a pursuit, and you're never, it does evolve over time. So for like anybody coming across this episode that is like kind of new to the idea of cherishing, like we have people all the time text us like, oh, I really like love that episode. Really loved what you guys are talking about. I learned something from that. Like if this is something that you're just now learning, cherishing is something that grows as you grow in your marriage, in your relationship. So just like trust, it's the same thing. It should grow as a bond. And I don't know, I'm just really excited to start diving into this with, just me and you, because
Yeah, for sure.
I think it's really going to help my perspective personally. It's not like we have like I don't think there's any like holes in our ship or anything. Like we're not struggling, but I feel like if you're not hitting all the bases, you're not going to have the fullest relationship. And I heard this one guy say, just like any of God's blessings, when you obey, just like any of God's commandments, when you obey them, there's blessings in it. So it's the same thing. There's a scripture that says Christ loves the church and cherishes the church, something like that. I think it's in Ephesians. But
Ephesians 5.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. You would know. But he also commands the husbands to love their wives as Christ loves the church. And if Christ is cherishing the church, then we're supposed to be doing the same exact thing.
Yeah. And I think that's like the whole concept of that is that Christ laid down his life for the church. Mm-hmm. And that, so many people, and this is a slightly like segue, but a lot of guys think that being the leader means that I get to be the decision maker. Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, making decisions is the easiest thing in the world, man. And he can do, like I have a 4-year-old, he makes decisions all the time and has no problem communicating them to other people. But when you make decisions with the other person in mind, and there are times where, okay, my will has to die for us to continue to grow.
Yeah.
And that's the sensitivity that like Christ continually shows to us, that man, he laid down his life for the church when the church had done nothing for him, when the church had given him nothing to work with, when the church had not been a blessing to him. That's when Christ died for the ungodly, at a time when we were far away, and scripture says at enmity with him. And so you have to be very careful about like getting into that conversation. Because I actually called one of my friends on the carpet recently. We were in a conversation, and he made the comment that, he said his wife had not been a very easy person to pursue recently. And I said, dude, that's baloney. It's not a good enough answer.
Yeah.
Because it's never been about whether she deserves your pursuit or your cherishing. It's that you made a commitment to her, plain and simple. So your pursuit and your cherishing follows that commitment, whether the feelings are there or not. It doesn't matter. Jesus doesn't ask us like, man, did y'all do everything I asked you to do yesterday to decide how I'd treat you today? Mm-hmm. That's a powerful mindset, that Christ continually loves us today, regardless of what yesterday looked like. And there are times in marriage where that's really hard because, something was said. And but Tim Keller always said that marriage and covenant is when you put relationship over emotions. And that comes back to the unity of it, that I will continually prioritize the unity and the us over the me and how I feel. Like that hurt in the moment, and I'm going to communicate that, but we are more important. And that has to bring us home.
Yeah.
It's exactly the higher view perspective right there. I don't know if you all know this, our podcast is a higher view podcast.
Yeah.
So it's just that right there is looking at things from a higher perspective. I love that.
Yeah. I feel like dying to yourself and being able to like recognize not only like with your relationship with God, because you have to die to God, you have to die to, get your flesh out the way, but also in marriage. And I feel like that's a skill that you have really mastered. I feel like all of the times that I've heard you speak, because there's been many times, this guy always, he's spitting words all the time at church. We have, we'll have meetings that are, we mentor people, and we have a group going, and he's always helping out and stuff like that. Even in the past though.
Bishop Abe.
Oh, Bishop Abe back at
How
it.
to say it.
But every time I hear you talk, bro, I feel like you've really mastered the skill of dying to yourself. And it's a very hard thing to master. I see it in your marriage. I see it in how you speak, how you treat people, how you react to things, you know, and I just want to give you honor where honor's due, because that's a really, it's a hard thing to master.
Yeah, I would echo that. And also, I think to piggyback on what I was saying about, you know, it's okay to communicate. I've also felt okay communicating because it lands in a safe place, you know? So like, I think on the opposite of whoever is receiving the communication, be a safe space so that they are okay communicating, you know? And you know, when it's like, you know, like maybe people are hesitant to like share, this is what I need because it's going to be balked at, or, you know, like, why do you need that? Or, you know, like just kind of where it's like all of a sudden like, okay, never mind, I won't share, you know?
Yeah.
But I've watched time and time again, and I think that's why it's gotten easier too, is that I know when I communicate it, like it might have to like get him time to process if I'm thinking about like a deeper thing or whatnot. But I know the response will always be like not rejection, but like pursuit of those needs being met then.
Just like loving you, right?
Yeah.
Right where you're at and being selfless.
Yeah.
Like everything I'm hearing now is just, I'm just hearing the word selflessness. Like that's a word, right?
Yes.
I was like, wait, am I saying this right? Selfless.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like we have to be selfless to cherish our spouse, because and what Abe was saying, how it grows and it continues to grow, and you carry what cherish looks like in this season to the next season, but you also are going to have more new ways of cherishing. You're going to have to be selfless and looking at like what's in front of you, and less of like what's just here in you. It's what's out, what's going on in my home, what's going on in my family. Where do I need to set the boundaries out with work and like busyness in life? Because I feel like life is just pulling us in so many directions. I mean, I can't imagine being a mom too and having 2 kids to take care of and things like that. It's a lot. And then to still make sure you're cherishing your husband, because husbands comes before kids. But it's like when the baby needs you 24/7, how do you balance that all out? Just have so many questions.
Well, one thing I was actually, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's funny because I don't know if we've ever like distinguished it, but one thing we do with our 4-year-old that I'm sure a lot of parents do that is helpful for toddlers is to kind of like look ahead and kind of prep them, you know, of like, hey, in 20 minutes, we're going to go do this, you know, like where you just kind of, you know, we just left him with a babysitter and I said, hey, he can watch a show, but, you know, like get him to play after a bit. But I said, don't just abruptly turn off the show. Like give him a heads up, you know, about 5 minutes before you're about to turn it off and say, hey, I'm about to turn off the show. You know, it's kind of just like prepping his emotions, whatnot. But I think we inherently do it in our marriage too, of where we've learned actually where things abruptly happen. That's where stuff doesn't go well, when it's like all of a sudden like, whoa. And so it's whether it's looking at the week ahead or whatnot, if we know something could possibly like, you know, fly in our face and be, I don't know how to describe it, but where it might be a little bit difficult to handle in the moment. Like I think we're constantly, and maybe it's just the practice of doing it with our 4-year-old of like, hey, I have this, this, and this, like I'm going to need this from you, you know, like, you know, we're even, you know, we were going to go somewhere and Abe said like, hey, I'm planning to like watch Kanan, our 4-year-old, you know, like I'm going to take ownership of making sure he's watched. That way it's not in the moment of like, hey, do you got him? Do you know, like I need help, you know, like all this stuff where it's honestly kind of being proactive, where it's looking ahead and just communicating again, like our needs and also how we're thinking about how we're going to help each other out in that moment. So
this is definitely something I needed to hear. I could do a much better job being like, hey, I'm going to have this going on. Can you help me with doing this in the house, you know, this week? Or I don't do that. I try to take it all on myself, and he kind of has mind reading type thing.
Whatever's left, I'll pick up. Yeah.
No, for sure. And I think any mother can relate. I mean, any woman can relate of just like, there is this element of like, I can do it, you know, and honestly, mine has come from like falling flat on my face where I realize, oh, I can't do it. That like it does finally come to like, okay, I can't do this on my own. And I'm gonna need help, and like communicating that, not just with him, but like other people as well.
There also was, because it falls perfectly with that in the book, it's called Cherishing.
I think it's called Cherish.
Cherished.
Cherish.
Who's it by again?
Oh man,
I don't remember. We'll put in the show notes in. But it said you need your spouse. That's another way of cherishing, is showing that you need them.
Yeah.
And so that reminded me of that.
Yeah, I think that was definitely like a hard thing for me at the very beginning because, I was 28. I lived out the house for almost 10 years when we got married. There's a lot of things you just develop self-sufficiency in. And it's like, I don't need help.
Yeah.
But it's like, no, you realize like she wants to help me. And by choosing not to let her, that hurts her. And it doesn't foster trust. It doesn't build trust. And like, that was a big thing I had to learn, was just allowing her to help me in things and allowing myself to communicate, hey, if you could help me in these areas, that would be really beneficial, because it's welcoming them into your world. And that's what marriage is. It's a combining of two worlds into one world.
Yeah.
And
A clash, if you will.
yeah. And the more like lives that get added into that, if you're not good at making it one, it gets really hard. Because everything has to then be very segmented, and it's like that makes marriage doesn't need help being hard, and yet by poor habits we can often make marriage harder than it has to be.
So unity is the goal.
Yeah, and I mean unity has to be the lighthouse
Throughout families too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because even in conflict, there has to be a moment where the unity catches your eye, and it's like, wait a minute, what is actually gained if I win this argument? What do I actually gain from that? And oftentimes the answer is very little. if not nothing, all the
That'll
time.
preach, not just in marriages. You don't win much by winning an argument.
Bragging rights,
Yeah.
at the least.
Right,
And who's going to be on that podium with you?
No one.
Exactly.
but when that moment hits, it's that like, okay, we've got to pivot. We've got to get back to each other. And that has to factor in, you guys talked about dying to yourself. To me, it's a very simple concept of like, either you truly believe that God takes care of you, that he is the keeper of your soul, that he is the one who satisfies every need of your life, or he's not. Because if he is, then I can lose an argument and still be okay.
Mm-hmm.
If he is, then I can have something not go my way and still be okay. Because it has to come like, it says in Psalms and it says in Jeremiah that we're like a tree. We're meant to be a tree planted by the water.
Mm-hmm.
And that means our source doesn't come from outside. That source comes from inside. And that's his presence on the inside of us that fills that.
Ooh.
Oh, that's so good.
I'm like, ooh.
Yeah.
When we were
I'm just,
talking
like,
earlier,
seeing
I
it.
got the picture of like a tree, and I think that's also, as marriages grow, and it is a living organism, like we are, and I think also marriage is also where, it starts with a seed, and like I think encouragement to whoever, wherever they are, like it's okay if you're not an oak tree, we're not an oak tree, but we're also not a little baby seedling anymore,
Right.
but also how do things grow in, they get sunlight, they get rain, they're cared for, they're nurtured, there's the chance of a wildflower making it, but also, it might not make it, and so in the intentionality, like you're going to grow something as you invest in it, as you take proper care of it. And that thing is going to grow. And maybe even if it's not at a stage that you want it to be at, like, I don't know when we're going to make it to an oak tree. Like maybe, when we're 70, I don't know, and I don't know where we're at right now, but like I said, we're not where we're used to be. And I think
Right.
that that's with each marriage is like also just evaluating, like, where are we at, in this, like, living, breathing, plant like thing where the Bible always talks about, plants and seeds and growth and whatnot. And how can we pull out the weeds? How can we, and also none of that can be done without the Holy Spirit, because he knows us and, he knows what we need. And, so yeah.
Yeah, I think the word that comes to mind with cherishing is cultivating. Like, you cultivate an atmosphere in your marriage, and cherishing is like the action of that cultivation. of, you're investing, there's an investment in what's going on, and you're investing in the health of what's happening. And to me, that's cultivating and cherishing go hand in hand with that.
Yeah. It really does take work.
That's what I was just thinking.
Yeah.
All I'm hearing is just taking work.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like, it's literally anything. Like you can apply that to anything, any kind of friendship, any kind of relationship that you have, relationship with parents. If you want to get stronger spiritually, go read the word, sit with God. It's really simple. I just think we kind of live in like a laziness environment where like no one really wants to put the work in. And then maybe years down the road, it's like, why are things so hard? Because no one really put the work in. But that's a principle I really want to like stick with in our marriage. Like the work part, because that is all marriage is. Every time you talk to people, marriage is work. Marriage is hard. Marriage is work. So I just feel like that's a principle that we should hold tight to.
Yeah, I feel like we're in a really interesting season too. I mean, we're 25, 26, no kids yet. Our focus is building, a future and things like that. At this age, you're kind of just like, where are we going and things like that. And so I think our marriage is definitely the more important, because, I mean, God is one, then marriage, then your family, then work, and that's how what's it called?
How it flows down.
Hierarchy. Hierarchy.
Yeah, that's how that flows down. But I think if we always talk about this, if this is good, then everything that we're doing is going to be good. So if the roots are good here, then that tree is going to continue to grow. But if our roots are getting a little withered because it's not getting watered properly, or I definitely think this is where it's going to start first for everything else to be okay. And so, but one thing I was thinking about when we were saying like we're like in a lazy world sometimes with people, just from my experience with some recent family members and seeing their lives and seeing them not having a relationship with God anymore, I've like noticed it's because they've only seen bad in life. And at some point they were at my age, high with God, like on the high with God, and just that life is all great and going after God so much, so much passion, and they're young. And then as they're getting older and like life is happening and they're seeing bad things happen in their life and their kids' lives and all these things, they're just like, God, like, where are you? And now they don't have a relationship with God anymore. So I know that you guys been through some hard things in y'all's lives together. How are you guys keeping your faith so strong in the midst of seeing so much seeing a bad season in y'all's life?
Well, I think a lot of it comes back to expectation. And there are people that have an expectation that once they step into relationship with God, nothing else will ever go wrong again. And that's not what he promised. He says, in this life, you will have trouble, but take heart, for I have overcome the world. And you can't look at the life of Jesus and see that he went through trouble all the time. And then you look at the life of the Apostle Paul, and he went through trouble all the time. And trouble will either direct you back to him or direct you away from him. And I think a huge factor in what determines those things is your circle. And your circle matters so much, because your circle is either pushing you back to God or it's pushing you away. And I think you have to be really careful when you start to go through hard things, who you share with and who you listen to. Because whether we like it or not, the people that we care about the most have the loudest voices in our lives. And they're either using them to push us in a good direction or push us away.
Yeah.
And I've consistently gone through hard things and had a circle that pushed me back to the Lord. That just because this bad thing happened, like, I think it goes back to we would never want God to judge us on a moment by moment basis, but we constantly want to judge him on a moment by moment basis. That like, God, you were really good last week because we got a check in the mail, but today I got in a car wreck and, where were you? We would never want to be judged that way. Yeah, but we want to judge God like that. And I think there's an aspect of like, man, he is the Lord. And there's a reverence that comes with that. as I've grown in relationship with God, as I've matured in relationship with God, like I don't get to decide what I like and don't like about him.
Yeah.
In the same way, like, you know, in marriage, once I married Tricia and I stood in front of everybody else and said, I give you my life and I give you my everything. That's not the time to sit down with her the next day and be like, okay, now here's the things I don't like. If we could work on them, that'd be awesome.
Right.
It was like, no, marriage is the ultimate saying, I accept all of you. You accept all of me. Current state. Doesn't mean that we won't grow. Doesn't mean that we won't change, but it means I love you right there where you're at. Man, that's what the Lord did for us. He loved us right where we were. And I just endeavored to love him back right where he is, regardless of whether I like that or not, or whether something happens that I agree with or don't agree with. My opinion only matters so much in those things.
Yeah.
And I, as we've been having this conversation, and it's interesting, because the Bible actually even talks about that marriage being a picture of Christ in the church. And as we're talking about just even marriage stuff, I'm constantly in my brain thinking about my relationship with the Lord and how much it mirrors that. Mm-hmm. And I think the word that comes to my mind is covenant. And I think a lot of people don't necessarily have that grasp of it, and there's a song, it probably came out before you guys' time. It was before I was married, and I'm sorry, I don't know the name of it or whatnot, but I know the key line was...
Sing it for us.
I don't even know the tune, but the phrase was, that's what the promise is for. And you think about it, the reason you make a promise is not because during the easy times when it's easy to choose each other, you actually make a covenant and a promise because there's going to be times you want to run away. Mm-hmm. And that's what the promise is for. Yeah. And I think that's the same thing with the Lord, is it's actually making a covenant with him because it's not always going to be sunshine and roses, but that's what the promise is for. Wow. And so I think that aspect of covenant, and then also just to go back to the seeds and plants and stuff, the parable of the sower, it actually talks about, I forget which type of soil it was that landed on the type that actually it didn't flourish because of hardship. That was the type of soil that the seed fell on. And, early on, and I give credit to the Holy Spirit for this, but I remember reading that parable and I just remember making my prayer, let me be good soil, and I think that that's something that, ask the Lord to create good soil in your heart too, so that when the seed falls on it, even when the storms come, you still produce fruit and you don't seed doesn't fall on the soil that when it sprouts up, it just quickly falls away because of hard stuff.
Yeah. That's such a good prayer.
Because I think so much of what happens in hardship goes back to foundation. And, what you guys were talking about with when we're good, everything else will be good. That speaks to foundation. Yeah. And if you think of a construction building, you can't build up without firmly building down. Mm-hmm. And building down is what holds you in the wind and the rain and the storm, is that foundation. And foundation is the thing you can never overinvest in. You see some of these buildings and a large part of the cost went into the concrete and the foundation work. The rest of the building wasn't as expensive as what went into that, because that's what will speak to the long-term durability of the thing. And your marriage and your faith in the Lord are no different. That you can expect to be as strong as your foundation. And as much as you invest in your foundation, you talk about this laziness, it all comes back to, with everything in life, you can either pay now or you can pay later.
Yeah.
There is no skipping paying. There can be hard things now and you can put in the work for the foundation, or you can try to, dig it up later and have to put in a whole lot more work to do the exact same thing that you could choose to do now on the front end.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big piece of it, is that foundation is something that has been overlooked. I think in often Christian circles, we have not really put in the work to build people foundationally to a place and taken them on a journey of, this is what it looks like to actually walk out. And we spoke about earlier, but the practicality that comes with living your faith. And this is what it looks like to live in relationship with God, not have him be some little gigapet that you call on or get what you want from, but someone that you actually join to do life with. I think that's a big piece of that.
Yeah. Can never invest too much in your foundation. That's really, really good.
So many nuggets right now. I just feel like I'm getting so filled up.
Well, we are reaching our time limit.
Can
Here
keep going?
I know, in a couple minutes. I wish we can keep going. We could go on probably for like 3 hours the whole night. But to wrap things up, what are some actionable things for people that are listening? Let's say people that are not quite married yet, single, dating, and or married. What are some actionable things that they can start doing to look forward to cherishing or prepare to cherish?
Yeah, so I would say if you're in a relationship or you're married, the number one and two things that I would do is, number one, have a conversation with the person you're in a relationship with, and have a status check. Like, hey, how do you feel like I'm doing? And do it unprompted, and let them be honest with you. You know, be gentle, but be honest. And then like have inward conversation with the Lord, because the Lord knows the person that you're in a relationship better than you do.
Yeah.
And there can be tremendous insight into like, hey, this would really mean a lot to them. And, you know, one thing I love about our pastor is that he talks about stop doing things for God and start doing them with him. Like, stop trying to be married for God and just be married with God. And like walk through that journey with him, not just for him. And so those are like number one and two things. And then if you're not married yet, stewardship reigns supreme. Stewardship applies to every area of your life. And the way you steward the relationships in your life now, whether with friends, whether with family, those habits translate when you get married. There's no new you that pops out and it's like, oh, this has married me and this person has everything figured out. It's like, no, it's the same you.
Yeah.
And so take inventory of how you handle conflict. When somebody says something, do you like run and hide, or, you know, take inventory of those things when you're single, because they will be the same things you do when someone that you're in a relationship with hurts you or conflict arises. Begin to take inventory, because those are the things that are going to carry over and will show up later.
Yeah. That's really good, bro.
Yeah, I think especially for those that are single, like invest in yourself and your relationship with the Lord. Like, don't be, it takes two healthy people. So get healthy, I guess. Pursue wholeness.
So
you know,
good.
You're never going to be 100% healthy. You know, there's always going to be areas to grow in. But I think just pursue wholeness would be my.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Pursue.
Yeah. I just to dovetail on that, one of the guys I really admire says it's really hard to be holy if you're not whole. And like that's such a big piece of it. And I agree that any time in our marriage or our lives that we've individually pursued wholeness, it has benefited the whole of us.
Yeah.
Absolutely every time.
Yeah.
I love you guys so much.
Oh, we love you guys
Yeah,
too.
that's so sweet.
Let me just honor you guys too. I think one of the things that is so beautiful about you guys, both individually and collectively, is you guys are so hungry to learn, and that's a trait that will take you guys so far, is teachability. You know, Alexus, when you do my hair, you're constantly asking me questions, you know, like I hear you guys ask, and you genuinely are asking out of a place to, and it honestly, I mean, it makes me a little nervous because, I mean, we've only been married 7 years, so we certainly don't have, you know, but just the fact that you guys are always open to ask questions, to learn, that hunger, like not just from us, but other people. Like, I think that's amazing that you're always looking to learn, and that will always, you know, you'll be fed.
Thank you so
you.
much.
Yeah, I
Appreciate
echo
that.
that. It's a really beautiful thing, and it's something that will serve you for the rest of your marriage. And when that's something that legacy leaves, of like, you know, everybody wants to leave a legacy of wealth and influence, but it's like you leave a legacy of humility and teachability, man, you'll change your family.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sounds much better to me.
Yes.
Well, thank you guys so much for making
Man,
it
thank
out
you.
here.
We
and being
love
on
y'all.
our podcast.
Especially
This
with
is-
bravery.
Yeah.
I know.
Thank you, Bravery, for all the words.
Thanks, listeners, for every sigh. And she's just like, she's really loving her bottle right now. So, you know.
It feels, I hear her in my ear and it feels homey. I love it.
Hopefully it's not too distracting.
No,
Sorry,
it's
y'all.
all right. It's okay. But I love you guys. Thank you so much for coming.
I love you too. Thank you.
We thank you guys for watching. If you made it to the end of this episode, we hope you guys got something from it. There are a lot of golden nuggets in here.
Absolutely.
We'll keep you guys updated with what's coming next. But until then, see things from a higher view. Peace out.
Peace out.